Welcome to the Command Share, brought to you by Star City Games. I'm Sheldon Menery, founding member of the Commander Rules Committee. Each episode, I'm joined by one of my RC colleagues as the co-host, and we break the show into two blocks. First, in the Command block, we talk about the RC's high-level decisions, thought processes, or just what we're most recently discussing. Then in the Chair block, we lean back, talk about playing the game, the cards, the decks, the tech that the RC likes to bring in the style of games that we like to play. This episode's co-host is co-founder of the RC, Gavin Duggan. Gavin, have a seat in the command chair.
Good to be back.
All right, anything new since the last time you've been here?
No, still quarantining, still staying safe.
Yeah.
We'll get this. We'll beat this.
Yeah, eventually. Yeah. All right, well, let's move right into the command block then. On the last episode, I talked with CAG member Olivia Gobert-Hicks about the future of Commander from her relatively new to the big picture perspective. I thought it'd be a nice contrast for you and I to talk about the future of the format from the been there since the beginning side. Among the RC members, you're sort of the think outside the box person. So where do you see the format in 5 years? And does that jibe how you want the format to be in 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think the format's got a lot of momentum at this point. I wouldn't, there's a difference between an escape velocity and a ballistic trajectory, but I think we're on a pretty good path. I don't see it changing drastically over the next 5 years. I think as more and more people play it, it gets more and more stable, which is good. There are sort of still risk points, things that could change the culture. If WotC suddenly started putting $1 million in prizes into events for Commander based on who was winning first place, nothing we could do would stop it from cratering. But by and large, in 5 years, I think we'll have. I think Command Fests are a great sign. So hopefully we'll have more of those, in person soon, or as necessary online. People playing more. I think more tools, as the internet is now more and more sort of part of the way we play Magic formats. It's acceptable to make use of online tools. So those are the two big shifts I could see happening.
So do we need to think about those things? I mean, do you and I and Toby and Scott need to think about how people are applying those things as part of what we do, or are they just the sort of collateral effect of what we happen to be doing?
No, we need to be aware of them. We need to be taking advantage of them where we can. We need to be partnering with them where we can. Like any kind of community effort, realistically, we're beholden to our players. What the players are playing, we lead by example. We don't lead with a reins or a yoke. And if everybody starts playing a particular way with particular tools, the existence of Architect, the existence of, if we go back to the dojo, right? You were around in the days of the dojo and how it changed Magic, right? Drastically. Sure. And it took 10 years before before the concept of, net decking is bad was mostly gone away. I mean, there's still some people who feel that way, but we need to, acknowledge the existence of that kind of tool for popularizing popular cards, popular lists. We can work with it. We can build things we can work with, whether it's as simple as the website or better, we could build platforms to help people find people to play on. I have said for a long time that Magic Online or Arena or whatever you'd like that has these sort of Commander or Commander adjacent implementations would greatly benefit from a system for finding people to play with that was richer. And if we could sit down, the four of us, and spend some time and work with other people to build a system for finding a good play group or finding a good game that isn't just, one line of text describing what you're hoping to find and you have to take whatever you get. A reputation system. These things would really help change Magic, especially in the online world, but even in the paper world.
Yeah. I actually talked to Commander community co-host Anthony Alongi today about sort of this very issue in our communities, and that finding a good game is more than finding just people who want to play the same game with you. There's a lot beyond the tabletop that goes into a Commander game.
Yep. There are arguably different types of games within the game. There are, I know you don't like subgame cards. It's not a dirty word. I'm not talking about subgames, but like there are, if you can go as far as variants, but even within Commander, different groups sort of resolve into different sort of clusters of behaviors. Finding people who want to live in the same place as you, or finding new types of clusters for us. We could use these tools to find different clusters of play style that we could then be aware of, that we could dig into, explore, join. All of those would be great.
Yeah, there seems to be there's a Discord server called PlayDH that is at least beginning to do the kind of thing that I think we're talking about here, where people self-identify with a kind of style of play. I mean, they call them levels, and I'm not a big fan of levels because it implies a hierarchy when it's not really.
It implies an ordering that doesn't exist. It's not even a hierarchy. Even if you took it as a left to right, I mean, bottom to top is clearly wrong. Left to right is probably still wrong. They're not well ordered. They are clusters. They are sort of in a multidimensional landscape of types of things that people want. What we as the RC can do, especially if we see that these things are starting to get critical mass, is think about, use the experience that we have, use the perspective that we have to provide communications tools, verbiage, quantification tools, whatever it is, to help people communicate more efficiently.
Message reinforcement is a good thing.
Message reinforcement would be a good one. Message assistance, signal boost. If there starts to be, like, let's take, for example, the concept, like, let's say that mass land destruction needed to be played more in Commander. All right. Okay. Maybe yes, maybe no. But let's say it did. Let's say that ramp was just actually too good. And the only really good answer to it that we have at the moment is mass land destruction. And there were people who were trying to advocate for that and say, hey, red land destruction, Armageddons, should be more acceptable. Let's make them socially acceptable. They're probably likely to get shouted down, in part because we have historically said, be really careful with that stuff. It's pretty boring. But if we saw, hang on, maybe they're right, we should go in and help them. So these are the kinds of shifts that I could see happening in Commander over the 5-year timescale that we need to be cognizant of, that we need to help with. So we need to respond and assist.
Yeah, the kind of things that people are identifying as their sort of anxiety points are the ones that we need to pay attention to. Again, not necessarily individual cards, because we know this card or that card is something that causes people problem, but stylistic issues, and then maybe helping them understand those issues a little better. Somebody came to me last week and was like, ramp is out of hand in Commander, so you should unban Sundering Titan. And my answer to that was, I think you maybe think this through a little more. The player playing excessive ramp is going to get to Sundering Titan faster than you are. So that's not really the kind of answer that you're looking for. You
keep using this answer. I do not think this answer answers the problem you think it answers.
So, I mean, we are enjoying unprecedented popularity. And part of that popularity has come from the fact that we've kind of been intentionally hands off for a good deal of Commander's run. Do you see us needing to grip the rudder a little more tightly here, or just stay with the same style that we've had in the past?
Good question. I definitely don't think a firmer grip is the way to go. I do think there are places where we might need to push back harder because the momentum will be stronger to make changes that aren't healthy. And I think some of this comes from within the walls of Wizards, who have the format's they want to see the format succeed, unquestionably.
Sure.
But they have incentive constraints that may not be aligned with the health of the format. They want to make money. That's very good. They're enlightened people. They realize that success of the format. But I could see us having to have a more firm response in how we push back on changes that, things that might seem like they're going to be popular, but are actually not going to be great. They're going to end up being degenerate. I can see a groundswell of opinion in a larger population as we are less and less connected. And I don't mean us, the RC. I mean, as the community as a whole of Commander players are less connected as it gets bigger, it's easier for it to fragment or faction and for some of those factions to build up momentum before we, as a community have a holistic conversation about them. At which point, when we are resisting a large, a very strong momentum from a certain portion of the population, historically, we've been able to say, we don't think that's a good idea. We're not going to do that. Now we may have to have more of a court press where we, we get out, we have messaging, we talk about it, we say, no, this is why it's a bad idea. We need to be explained. We need to be clear. We need to listen. Maybe we're wrong. Yeah. But that's where I see that we might need to be more firm.
Well, one of the danger points here is that there's a sort of a psychographic that are the ones that will tend to make their opinions known. So there's the play style. I think the more competitive the play style of a individual player, the more likely they are to want to go out and be heavily invested in the format, which means they're the ones who are going to be more likely to express their opinions. There's a danger in some of the tools we have because the data isn't necessarily the cleanest data that we can gather.
No, I have really struggled to get clean data, and it is self-sampled data is inherently dangerous.
Right. 100% of people that responded to this survey responded to this survey.
That we know.
After that, it gets a little fuzzy.
Well, we don't even know that 100% of the people who didn't respond to this survey didn't respond to this survey.
Uh-oh. Did we get into some sort of temporal loop there?
No, but we might have ended up where packets get dropped and we don't even know that they responded.
Right. Well, yeah, I think that's a message that we have to keep telling people, that they get invested in the results of online surveys, which give us good trends, I think, but they don't necessarily give us sharp answers because there are more people not answering the surveys than there are people that are answering the surveys.
By an order of magnitude, probably 2. Which means we're literally only sampling maybe 10% of the players at best. And it is a biased sample. Like you said, it is a heavily biased sample where that 10% that we can see and that they see amongst each other aren't the most. Now, when we learn things about from those folks, we can acknowledge, all right, this is a real thing. There is a groundswell, or there is a coherent message that is coming from this part of the population. The trick is the denominator. We need to know if there are 100 people who say this, is it 100 of 5,000, or is it 100 of 500, or is it 100 of 500,000?
Right.
And I think even they would agree that if it's 100 of 500,000, it's probably not the best decision, like the best basis to make a strong decision on. So we have to.
Right. But we have to hear the voice and then figure out how to give that voice its appropriate weight.
Yep. And part of that is reaching out. Part of that is building an index, building a what we call an index in the search engine business, which is basically a broad scope knowledge of who is there that we could then contact and sample. It's the phone book. It's the basis for gathering that data.
Which leads me to think that the more we can find a good cross section of people to get data from or to get impressions from, because data's a hard word. but to get impressions from, then the better off we are. The CAG being a move in one of the moves in this direction.
Yep. I think we're all in agreement on that part.
But again, as you and I have certainly discussed, that the CAG in itself is a biased sample because they were selected from content creators and people with broad social profiles. So they're not necessarily representing those unseen people that we talked about.
No, they are, like us, the CAG is entirely heavily vested people, more than heavily vested, professionally invested people.
So the anxiety for me here is, if we can't identify those people, how do we talk to them?
We reach out. We should be able to figure out where they are, starting with at least at the store level, right? Like I used to have a thing every year. I would make a list of 25 stores, trying to give some kind of even distribution across North America. I tried finding stores in Europe, and the language barrier defeated me. But even if we just sort of start with Canada, America, maybe Mexico, maybe South America, or just try to use our contacts to build up a network or a list of stores. And I would call up 20 stores every year, probably about 4 or 5 a month, calling each one a couple of times and be like, hey, do you have Commander at your store? What do you play? What's it like? And that was the closest, like I said, that I'd struggled to get data, and that was the closest I'd ever been able to come to it. I think starting with those stores is a good place. What we need is a way of getting the store level players to take that back home to the home level players, or to have business cards sitting on the table at these game stores around the world where players who come in, buy their box or buy their Commander decks and take it home to play, the store owners give them one and be like, by the way, these guys would love to hear what you have to say. That's the best I got.
Yeah, it's certainly a thing that we'll continue to work on and think about, and there are certainly people like at Wizards of the Coast who are also working on, okay, how do we find those people that we know are there, but we know that we don't know anything about?
Right. Market data is a profession. There are people who do this, and probably we should leverage them.
Yeah.
That said, we also do know what we want the format to be. I know there are some people who disagree with us steering it on the basis of what we feel it should be, but I'll be honest, straight up, I trust myself more than I trust anyone else.
Yeah, it's fair. And the fact that the popularity, I believe the popularity has stemmed from us sticking to our guns on the vision instead of trying to make it like anything else. And I mean, that's certainly a topic that we've hashed over and over again. So shifting gears a little bit, you and I are not getting any younger. Now, as it happens on the RC, I'm the oldest and you're the youngest, and there's about 15 years between us or more. So we've gotten to the point where it's probably necessary for us to start thinking about the format leadership for the future as well. But how do you see us approaching that future?
I mean, we've been working on it for 5 or 10 years. I mean, I would like to think I will outlive the format as much as I hope the format is long lived. That doesn't mean that I want to be doing this all my life. But yeah, I do think that we need to think forward. You always taught me as a judge, the first thing you do, train your villain replacement. Have those people available. From a philosophy perspective, go back to the things we talked about last time. Breadth of perspective, but shared values. Right. People that are that we trust as people. When we can't, there is no way we're ever going to come up with a rubric for evaluating RC members. It's I think this person's a good person is always going to be the top of the list. And beyond that, I think this person has the temperament, has the, we've always said that that RC membership, RC additions were unanimous, required unanimous. That has always been a bedrock of the group. because we work together. I don't see us ever taking a departure from that. That everybody has a veto, which is a tricky environment to work in, frankly.
Yes. Well, you have to trust the other people that you're working with, and which is a point that I was going to come around to was, will it ever be possible to form the kind of block that the four of us have over the years? Because, this has been a thing where we've trusted each other on the vision of the format for a long, long time.
I think there's two different questions there. There's forming the same kind of bond we have and forming the same kind of block. The kind of trust bond that we've been able to establish, I think, can be built over time. Although doing things together is usually the only way to build trust. So that's going to be, important. But I think we will have to, whoever comes on, whoever leaves, whether we grow, whether we rotate, we have to make sure that we build up to that trust, and we should take steps to provide opportunities to build that trust before it is tested.
Mm-hmm.
That's so the bond. I don't think we'll ever have the same kind of bond. The fact is, we've been friends for a decade and a half. That's a pretty rare occurrence. All other things being equal. Could we, should we build the same kind of block? No, I don't think so. I think it is natural that the kind of, we're not a dictatorship, but we are sort of a monolithic governance entity.
Yeah.
Those tend to give way to rotating representation, like successful ones, rotating representative. I think it is quite likely that at some point in a few years, 5 years, 10 years, who knows, whenever this is, that we would get to a place where we're like, all right, here are the rules for finding new members, for how long members serve. We are kind of self-appointed for life, for better or for worse, or at least until we decide to step away.
Right.
I think that is a reasonably good structure for starting a project and seeing a project launch and gain momentum. And, when you really want that clear continuity. Once the project has momentum, continuity of leadership is not the most important thing, which means we need a process whereby it becomes a living organization. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we have to operate in the assumption, like, you said, I hope that I outlive it, but we have to operate under the assumption that we won't. Because if the format or the game is gone in 10 or 15 years, then it doesn't matter. But if we're gone in 10 or 15 years, then it does. Yep. Assuming that the game is still around.
Yep.
So yeah, our operational philosophy is just, okay, well, this thing is gonna succeed us. So how do we continue to foster what we've fostered in the past? And it's not going to be easy because this is a frank conversation that you and I are having in front of a bunch of people. But it's not easy for people who have had authority to want to surrender some of that authority, or as we're seeing in the world right now, people who have privilege not wanting to surrender some of that privilege.
One of the greatest marks of a good leader is the willingness to limit, delegate, or release their own power. And I don't say that of us. I say that of world leaders. I say that of organizational leaders. The ability to say, okay, cool, this is good. Let's see it sail. People joke about that with parents, but it goes beyond parenting. That said, we talk about, hope for the best, plan for the worst. This is more a case of let's plan for the best. Let's plan for, if you'd ask people 15 years ago, will Magic be around? Will Magic live to see 25 years? I bet you get pretty long odds on no.
Sure.
All right, maybe Commander is around in 10 or 15 years. So let's it's a good conversation to have. Write your wills, folks. If you're a grown-up with a salary, write a will. You're not going to make yourself more likely to die. You are likely to make your loved ones' lives easier.
Right. Well, I can't. I'm trying to imagine a future where a non-apocalyptic future. I'm not talking about Children of Men or anything here. Just the normal progression of society and how there wouldn't be magic 10 years from now. And I'm struggling to see that wouldn't be the case. And the future, I believe that Commander is a big part of the future of Magic. So naturally, I think it's still going to be around.
Yeah, I think we've got an 80% chance that Magic is still around in 10 or 15 years, and an 80% chance that Commander is sort of around for the long haul, that as long as Magic is here, Commander and this concept of social formats and, whether it's one or others or whoever. So, yeah, better than 50% bet that we need to plan for a 10 or 15-year tenure, et cetera, et cetera. So these are conversations that we have, that you and I have talked about, and we'll continue to talk about. And I mean, obviously, representation is something that you and I have brought up over the years.
Yeah.
That in addition to the procedure for finding and attracting and evaluating people and building trust, there's also the question of let's make sure that we find the right people, both people who are good at it and people who represent players, perspectives, backgrounds, everything.
Yeah. Well, the simple truth is that there are probably more people who are capable of serving in a role than there are roles for them to serve in.
Yes, right? Unquestionably.
There are a lot of really smart and really capable people in the Magic community. And, just because all of them aren't on the RC right now doesn't mean that they're not capable of it. It's that there's a limited amount of good that we can do with not having too many people trying to make this. I'm a big believer that committees sometimes make really bad decisions. And when your committee is way too big, you don't get that feedback loop that you need.
Yeah, I mean, a camel is a horse built by committee. And let's be if we're honest, and there's no reason not to be.
Right.
We are probably not the best people in the world to do this. There are probably people who could do this better than us. And this, the game, the format, the players are, they work hard at this. We could probably still be quite, a lot worse than we are, and the format would still be fine. All right. We don't need to find perfect people. We need to find good people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we've been pretty clear that the next person on the RC or the next people on the RC don't necessarily have to come from the CAG. That intentionally the CAG wasn't built as a stepping stone to the RC, but truly to be an advisory body. There are people on the CAG that wouldn't be interested in taking the time that it takes to be on the RC, for example, or just, don't have the same kind of skill set that you need for a broader perspective.
No, absolutely. And it's the CAG was not formed as a selection or evaluatory group. It wasn't, we found people who were good at the thing we needed people to be good at. And that wasn't run the format. It was, a constellation of other things. There are great people in the CAG. There are, people who care a lot and who we trust, and we've had the opportunity to build trust with. And as I said, I think that is a very important part of making sure that whoever, whether it's one person or multiple people or whatever, come, and help out with the RC. The trust bond is extremely important. And so, yes, we have a chance, but we work with other people in the community too. We build trust with them. So we'll see, but it's just conversations.
We would also be silly to not look at the people on the CAG, right? There are skill sets there that are extremely valuable. You're right. We trust them. That's, there are 6 highly capable people who have engendered a great deal of trust. And especially in the year and a half that we've been working together, we've seen again and again how that trust has been justified. So it would be, again, it would be naive for us to not look there as well as looking across the field.
All right, so here's a more lighthearted take on it. You're a film person. Which actor would you choose if every actor in the world, it turned out, was a Commander fan and was like, oh yeah, I've decided I'm gonna, Gerard Depardieu says, acting's not for me anymore. I want to be on the RC. Of all the actors in the film world, who do you think would be an interesting addition to the RC?
Wow. Damn. Charlize Theron.
That's one of the people at the top of my list as well. That's really funny. I was thinking Furiosa. I was like, yeah, this is a person who has their head screwed on.
Well, yeah, I think she has a sort of a multiplicity of skill sets that she's fierce, right?
Sure.
That she is great at her craft, for one, which tells me that she's a sort of a deep thinker about the thing that she does. But yeah, she seems both like a brokers no nonsense from anybody kind of person, without being strident or unpleasant about it, but also can be an open and giving person and really think about the thing that they're doing.
Yeah, no, it's true. So anyway.
Now, I was also going to say Daniel Day-Lewis because he can do anything, but...
Well, Daniel Day-Lewis is the Pretender. Like, do you remember the TV show The Pretender?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that he's actually good at everything, it's that he can make everybody think he's good at everything, which is good enough.
Right. All right, well, the future commander is something that we are thinking about now more than ever. So rest assured that those thoughts will continue. I think it's time for us to stretch our legs a little, however. The folks that have come on this show have been playing the format for a very long time. We run cards that some newer players might never come across. We discuss some of those cards each week in our featured segment, Hidden Gems. Now, before we get started on this Hidden Gems, I want to give a shout out to the combo that you played on the stream the other night. Your commander, Zodiac Lord of Secrets, equipped with Fire Shrieker.
That was fun.
You were going to mill 320 from somebody at one point, right?
Yes. If I got to attack again, I was going to mill 320 cards from them. And it would also leave me with a 320 Zodiac. But no, I guess it would have left me with a 640 Zodiac.
Right. And well, and in black-blue, you don't have any fling. I guess you have right at consumption. Yeah,
that doesn't sound as much fun.
There's no instant speed fling there. So what's up your sleeve? What's up your sleeve this time?
I've been working on a Senastian Falconer deck just because I found one in a pile of cards.
Sure.
And so 5 mana accelerants aren't great, but
right.
We'll see. So I've got some Wart the Raid Mother. I might actually end up making it a Wart deck with a Senastian Falconer in there, but I think I might just start throwing some big fireballs, stuff like that.
Are there any other kind of fireballs to throw?
Oh yes, one of the greatest thing about Fireball is that you can play it for 3 mana and just kill Norrit.
If that's what you need to do, I suppose so.
Sometimes that's what you got to do. Sometimes that Weathered Wayfarer needs to die.
Fair. Eminently fair. The card that I'm picking this week is one that I know that you're familiar with, Detritivore.
Oh, yes.
So Detritivore is a Lurgoyf, by the way. That's red 2. And it's XX, and its power and toughness is equal to the number of non-basic lands in your opponent's graveyards.
Does it have a casting cost? I guess it does.
It does have a casting cost. It also has a suspend cost of red 3 and X can't be 0. The cool part is, when you remove a suspend counter from it, it destroys a non-basic land.
It's blow up targets Azcanta the Sunken Ruin. Blow up target Gaia's Cradle. And all these other non-basic lands that just need to die.
Right. how would you... Are there ways to remove the suspend counters that don't involve the trigger?
I know there are cards that put suspend counters on to cards in Exile. I don't remember if there are any that take them off.
Yeah, I don't think there are. I mean, like...
Wait, I think there was a red instant that was like a charm that might have been able to take them off.
Yeah, we'll have to look that up. That could be a compelling thing, because then you could suspend for hire. Because when I'm suspending this thing, it's always one or two, because I want to play.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely two ways of playing it. There's the suspended for two, or one, blow up a particularly public land and get yourself a 5/5 or an 8/8. There was a really big Detritivore in our game last week because I'd been milling people. Right. There were multiple 60-card graveyards in play. So that was a very large Lurgoyf. But there's also, I mean, I have definitely just been like, I'm just going to tap 10 mana, suspend this for 6, X equals 6, and I'm just going to spend the next 6 turns whittling away cards that are probably going to win.
And then by the time that last counter comes off, it's going to be immense. And you have something to do with it.
Doesn't hurt.
Yeah. I definitely want to look and see if there are cards that remove the counters by doing something else.
I know a card that can remove the counters from it.
What's that? Okay. Fair. Suspend
for 1, blow something up.
Yep.
Give it haste, attack, pick it up, do it again.
Suspend it again. Yeah, there we go. All right, well, we've delved into the mines and dug up a few hidden gems. Here's hoping we've inspired you to do a little spelunking of your own. Moving into the chair block, we're going to talk about the RC's metagame, or if there is one. So in the first part of what I hope to be a 3-part series, as Toby and then Scott follow you on as co-hosts in the next couple of episodes, is a discussion of the RC's playstyle. We play more regularly these days than we ever have. In fact, it was just a year ago that we were together, the 4 of us were together for the first time in more than 6 or 7 years. And that was at Gen Con.
Gen Con pre-plague.
Yeah. Now, we stream twice a week on Thursday evenings and Sunday afternoons. So it's pretty fair to say that we've developed an identifiable or a proto-environment. People often misuse the term metagame. So have we developed one yet?
No, well, sort of. So there's an interesting dichotomy among the RC members. And it's worth noting that we have guests on, which definitely shake things up. But you and I have high, mid-double-digit decks that we can call on. Toby and Scott have half a dozen. Now, half a dozen decks is still plenty, lots, and there's variety. But definitely I know what Toby's decks do. I know what Scott's decks do. To some degree, I know what yours do, although I can never remember which Carador is which. And I definitely try to explore this, the design space, the build space. So I would say to a degree, there's an environment, there's a context that we play within, that we have expectations. Not just about the cards. The more important context, I think, is that we know what kinds of things other members enjoy and don't. So I talked earlier about communications tools. That one of the things that we can provide is ways of communicating efficiently when talking about what do you want, what don't you want, etc. And that conversation we can have quite efficiently now. We know, at least in the mid power levels, the small, medium, larges, before getting into extra large, where we're sort of like, okay, I don't break out my my Archangel Avacyn deck very often that has a bunch of Jokul Hops in it and blows up everything. From time to time it's fun and you guys are accommodating, but I wouldn't want to do that even every month. That's sort of like an every 6 to 8 weeks kind of thing. So we know each other's tastes pretty well. And I think that is a very important context to play in, even if it's not like a metagame or a particular environment.
Well, I think we know each other's taste well enough that we're comfortable making fun of them, right? You know, every time I play Greater Good or Coiling Oracle
or Rampant Growth, yes,
or Rampant Growth or Scott, oh, Scott has Amazivith, great. So I think we see that the question there is, are we developing an environment based on the decks that the people in our environment are playing, or are we developing an environment based on the people?
I don't know. I know that one thing that factors heavily into what we're building is the audience.
Yeah. Oh, that's a very fair point.
There is an audience watching. Sometimes there's 50, 100, 200 players people at one point watching the games. We have a responsibility to those people to make sure that what we're playing is interesting, is dramatic,
right. That's a great point.
Tempo. Also, the medium that we're playing. I mean, Toby does his very best to ignore the fact that we're not actually in the same room, and
right.
Infinitokens has rescued us many times over. But Warp World is probably not something we should be playing.
Yeah, I keep threatening to play my Amanatu deck.
I mean, you know that I have my Tunnel Ignis Warp World deck. I'm going to break that out one day.
I think that you make a great point about the audience, about the people that are watching, and people want to see sweet tech and want to see explosive plays and epic events. They don't necessarily just want to watch somebody play solitaire for a long time. I don't think that any of us should ever bring in an eggs deck, for example, on the stream and play with each other.
Is this something that we should explore more? Like, I feel like if we could get people to understand that, just assume that there's a phantom audience watching you play Commander, and you'll probably have more success building your play group, building decks which engender these kinds of games that you've heard about. Imagine there's an audience.
That's an interesting thought path to go down to consider.
It's loaded.
Well, again, it's part of the philosophy, right? It's about considering the experiences of people other than yourself.
Right. But we tend to say, hey, consider the other players' experiences. But there's so much baggage around competition. And look, winning, it's a game, it has rules.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to sort of set aside my opponents are the people that I'm trying to beat. I honestly believe it's actually a journey that most Commander players go through, where they sort of come to grips with this idea of, oh, I get it. we're trying to do things together. Yes, there's a winner, but that's only part of it. That is a journey.
Right.
And by splitting it out a bit and saying, no, don't think so much about the experience just of the other players, although you should. Imagine there's an audience. We know that Commander has grown in large part due to other people walking by a table at your LGS, seeing you play and saying, oh yes, I want some of that. Yeah. Imagine that audience was there.
Play the kind of decks that people want to railbird.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Interesting thought experiment.
So, you've been playing some decks that you built a long time ago, right? That Sadek deck is not new, right? When was the last time you built a new one?
So I build at least one a year. I think the most recent one that I built was the 10 tickets deck that we played, the Sabotavik deck.
Right.
That was a lot of fun. I'm building this Wart / Sebastian Falconer big red green deck. Like once or twice a year. What I don't do is take decks apart.
Right. Me either.
And I don't like reason cards.
Unless they're... Well, to me, I realize that taking apart decks means that you have to refile the cards, right? You have to sort and put the cards back away. So it just seemed to me that keeping the decks together is an already efficient storage system for all my cards.
Sure.
And now that we've gone, we have the online tools, I can go, oh, what deck am I playing random.card in, so that I can go find it. So back to the environment discussion. Do you have any kind of pre-game mental prep? Do you just show up like, oh, we're playing, what am I going to play? And do you adapt? Do you have any kind of pre-game sort of rituals that you go through?
I have a pre-game ritual that involves like socks and eating, drinking certain types of root beer. But in terms of deck selection, I am notoriously bad at planning. And I usually show up, listen to what everybody else is playing, and say, okay, here's something in the same neighborhood. I feel like that is something that I can offer as someone who has lots of decks. And one of the reasons I tell people, as they become more invested in the format, is build a few decks. Have 3 or 4, because A, it lets you lend them out to other people. B, it lets you be flexible, and that lets you be a leader in your whatever game group you are in that day. Not necessarily even a long running group, but you can be a leader on a Friday night by being the person who says, the thing that we do here is that you tell me what you've got, and I will match you, and that trying to match and end up in the same level is sort of part of what we're trying to do. So that's something that I can help with. The RC is fine. The RC is not a group that needs help, but it is definitely something we can try to mesh the gears a little bit better. I also try to rotate through the decks that I have, some more than others. I have 2 or 3 decks that are sort of quite low powered. And those come out a little bit more often. The ones that are more high powered come out less often.
Well, you can. Zodic, Lord of Secrets, and Fire Shrieker is not what I'd call high powered anything. Fire Shrieker.
I'll take it.
When it happens, it's amazing. So
yes, but it is a 7 mana creature that does not have haste or any kind of protection, and also doesn't do any damage when it hits. So yeah, but it's grand, and that's sort of the best part of it. And I mean that game, I love that game. I got to mill out 3 opponents. It was hilarious. And it came down to the wire. I really thought I was going to lose to you there. Yeah, that was super close, and I didn't know. Sometimes when you have so many decks and you don't play them all that often, you don't know all 100 cards that are in your deck. And I'm wondering there, am I playing an Eldrazi or not? So I think there was a late game ramp spell that I didn't actually need, but I cast it so that I could go look through my library and know if I needed to worry about getting milled out, which I obviously did, or just like, okay, sure. Did you have a backup plan for the if there was an Eldrazi there? Do you just? Yeah, I mean, basically, what I have to do at that point is I have to use. There's a blue spell that can get an enchantment back from your graveyard. Well, it can actually get any card back from your graveyard. It's blue XX. Regrow X cards. I can't remember what the name of it is off the top of my head. But I would have to wait until I had that, get my Leyline of the Void back.
Oh, I see.
And then do it the long way, especially if it's an Eldrazi, because then I can't even use like the Tormod's Crypt in response.
Well, you can. If the trigger's on the stack, you can.
Are the Eldrazi triggers? Which are the ones that are replacements that shuffle in?
Yeah. But at the very least, if you Tormod's Crypt in response to the trigger, you get the Eldrazi and whatever's in the graveyard. Sure, the shuffle's still going to happen. Yeah,
the shuffle will, but if it's a trigger that works, I think there is at least one card that shuffles itself and your graveyard into the library. I could be misremembering.
Yeah, there are plenty of them, actually.
No, as a replacement.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well, let's look that up after. one of the other points of discussion that I want to hit is something that you and I have disagreed about in the past, and that's about king making.
Yes.
To me, it's not about king making, but it's about the retributive strike, to
my mind, those are different. One is less bad than the other. So in order to talk about king making, you have to have the conversation about first of all, king making is technically a discussion about what happens outside the game. It's a form of concession, and it's happening at the boundary between what is in the game and what is outside the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the time we don't have good rules, expectations around what's happening, outside the game. I can't use the term metagame here because it's so overloaded, but you can, you need to ask yourself, for example, are we playing one game or are we playing a series of games? Is it reasonable to say you said you wouldn't attack me last game and then you did, so I'm going to punish you in this game? Most people would say, that's starting to get suspect, but, we'll see how
it's the way blood feuds start.
At the same time, a lot of people sort of intrinsically will recognize that keeping your word within a game is usually good value. And that sort of implies that there is continuity of trust from game to game, or of reputation.
I will absolutely never go back on a deal that I made in a game. I think that the cost is just, one, I don't want to be that person. And two, the cost is just way too high. When you screw people over like that, they remember, and payback continues to come.
It's true. Even if they're not consciously paying back, they will. At the same time, if you and I sat down and played poker, and there was, we had an 8-person table of, of no limit hold'em, we were playing all the rest of it. And you said, you said to me, if I bet, will you just call? And I said, yeah, sure. I'm just going to call. If you bet, I am going to have no compunction whatsoever about raising you into the ground.
Huh.
I am going to take that bet that you've made and I'm going to re-raise and I'm going to push you out of that hand. Because I don't there's just an accepted level of what is a binding deal at a poker table. Magic doesn't have a really good sort of set of cultural mores around that outside the game. Two that I think are very valuable. The first is, are we playing one game or is it continuity? The second is, if there's 4 of us playing, by default, I think most people would say that first place is the winner, everybody else loses. If you are playing in a place instead where you say, or you all agree, first place is the winner, second place is better than third place. Third place is better than fourth place. Then that sort of changes the dynamics for king making again, where you sort of say, I'm going to take this person out so that I'm in second, even though I'm then going to lose to you because second is better than third. But if you don't have that kind of expectation, if you don't clearly sort of establish that first is better than second is better than third is better than fourth, and that people are expected to play to that goal, then if I've worked hard to sort of set up something where, we're all kind of jostling to try and kill all of our opponents and be able to survive. That is, implicitly throughout the game, it's one of the things that makes multiplayer games more interesting, is that implication that dying is bad and you have to try and win without dying. Kingmaker, to me, runs contrary to that expectation. By Kingmaker, for people who don't know, I'm basically saying where I as a third player decide between A winning and B winning, but I have no choice of me winning. I'm going out, but I can tell the difference between I can make Sheldon win or I can make Toby win. Toby's my family, so obviously I'm going to help Toby more than Sheldon, right? I think that would leave a bad taste in most people's mouths. So I think that. But
the flip side of that is I'm not going to be able to win, but Toby is the one that's knocking me out of this game. So what's reasonable vengeance for me to take on him there?
Yes, I think is very fair. That's I think you said earlier, the retributive strike. And I think it is very much within the game to say, look, you can't kill me without losing, so you shouldn't kill me.
Yeah.
All right. That if we each have an attacker, and we each have a lethal attacker, and I can remove Toby's creature, and I can swing at Toby, and I can kill Toby, but then I lose. To me, that is poor. Whereas at the same time, if Toby can say, well, you tried to kill me, so I'm going to kill you, and then Sheldon wins, that's totally fair game, because it's within the context of the game. You have to try to win without losing.
Yeah, I think that sometimes in my mind that, well, if I'm going to lose here, there's one person has been eliminated and there's two people left, and there's no way that I'm going to beat either of them, but I can take one of them out. It's what my mind goes through is, well, I can't win, but at least I can get a little blood on my hands.
Right. And so that's where I think this is what I was trying to explain, or what I was trying to talk about with establish the operating context before the game. Is it about, do you get 1 point for each player you eliminate? Okay. Yeah, absolutely do that. Get your win while you can.
Right.
But if it's first place or nothing, then and that's what people are building towards, and that's what people are trying to play towards, then Kingmaker is unseemingly. And if it's first, second, third, fourth, then the rules are different. So it's basically just a question of, to me, can I kill someone? Can I demonstrate some ability? Doesn't factor into my expectations for what we're trying to play towards. If it is, yeah, that's fine, and we can have that conversation anytime.
Well, yeah, the sort of follow-on question to what you had to say there is, well, what happens if we don't really care who wins the game, right? I mean, we're in the game and we want to win. We want our side to win. But in the end, when the four of us get together and play, do we really care who won the game in the end?
After the game is over, no. I would say there's this kind of weird sort of split-second moment where it matters that someone won, and then split second later it doesn't matter anymore. But that's the asymptote that we're all working towards. That's the that's the goal, even if the goal doesn't matter after it's passed. Now, there is something to be said for deciding that the game needs to end. Sure. Hey, we've been playing for 4 hours. We all need to go to sleep.
Right.
But I would rather that we all just say, okay, this game needs to end. Let's go to overtime. Let's have some rules where we say, hey, does everybody agree that we're now in the overtime rules? And overtime rules are anybody who can get a kill gets a point and is a winner, and anybody who hasn't knocked out another player doesn't win, or whatever constraints we want to put on. And I think it's fine to sort of to shift like that. But I do think we all start with assumptions that winning the game is the goal, or
sure,
winning the game in an interesting way is the goal.
In an interesting way, certainly I would rather lose in an interesting way than win in a boring one. At least when I'm sitting down with my friends to play a game. If I'm going to a tournament, that's all bets are off. But we're talking about radically different things here.
Would you say that the tension between players, like when you've got that kind of Mexican standoff, the tension of a Mexican standoff is, that might be a culturally insensitive term. I never thought about that. But yeah, in any case, I find it interesting. Trying to resolve that puzzle, it's a form of challenge to resolve. And so it's anticlimactic to me and disappointing to me when that goes away. And I think that's the gist of my concern with Kingmaker, is that I think most people find that, I can kill one of them, but not both of them. How do I kill both of them? That's a cool puzzle. Right. That's interesting.
Well, I mean, certainly there are variations on that, because it might be, I can't, I'm going to lose here. One of the two of them is going to kill me. So I want to take one out, and that leaves the other, that leaves the other just the opportunity
as the winner. I would rather that you as the person who can't win not you personally, but I would rather the third player who clearly isn't going to win takes their loss standing up and says, well, all right, I can't win. I'll let you two fight it out. Then I need to, I need to hurly burly and show that I'm here and that I'm important before I die. But yeah, it's just different experiences and different goals. And I think this is all falls under I don't think this is part of the game, the Rule Zero pre-game conversation that we expect to happen every time. But this is the kind of awareness of how your opponents think and feel and are looking that we're like, hey, different people play different games for different reasons.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm very happy that there really is no salt in our games. Again, I was talking to Anthony about his local group earlier today, and they've been together 20-something years playing games together and playing Commander for the last 7 or 8. And he said there is still really salty things that happen in their group that people will bear grudges and take things out on each other. So I'm happy that we've never gotten to that point, that the retributive strike is in the context of the game.
Yes.
Not in the context of the environment, because that seems like a really destructive path to lead yourself down.
Yeah, I mean what's that old aphorism about poisoning someone else or poisoning yourself and hoping that someone else will die? Just don't hold on to those grudges. It doesn't work. But I mean, I would say I remember there was one instance where you and I were at Gen Con. You and I and Sheldon and Scott and Toby were playing at Gen Con the first year, and I had the early, the turn 5, I think it was turn 6, Sorin, and I tend you. And I was just like, look, my chances of winning this game with 2 opponents are better than they are with 3, so I'm going to kill someone really early on. And Toby and Scott were both like, well, let's start smashing Gavin. And I was like, well, hang on. Why didn't you just kill Sheldon? And they're like, well, we kind of want Sheldon in the game. Like we're still. And I was like, okay. And yeah, I mean, I did feel a little salty at that point. We did have a conversation. I was like, look, if this is what we're playing, then I think I'm in the wrong game. And so we had a conversation. And part of it is the ability to trust that let's have a conversation. That if I explain where I'm coming from and why I'm upset and why I'm frustrated, that you will listen, or that we will listen and figure out, okay, all right, that was the problem. Let's adjust.
Well, I mean, in that particular situation you mentioned, from my perspective, I was like, well, shit, I didn't think that was the game we were playing. But from Scott and Toby's perspective, smashing you is so that you don't do the same thing to them, right? If you had tend me with Magister Sphinx instead of Sorin, the thing to do is take you out of the game so it doesn't happen. Well, the terrible thing happened to him. Glad it happened to him, but I don't want it to happen to me. I mean, so get him, boys.
Yeah, smashing Sorin makes sense. And if it's, oh man, that deck clearly is like is at a power level we hadn't anticipated. We better get him while we can. That makes sense. So these are, communication. It is a social format, and social interactions require communication.
Yeah, and I think when you have something happen that you don't feel particularly good about, then you do, especially when there are people that you know and trust, you talk to them. It's like, that wasn't the experience that I was hoping to have, or the way you did that, or what you did there didn't seem great to me. You played Kingmaker, or you were unnecessarily vindictive or something like that. Having those conversations is productive.
It is, although it's hard. I'm not going to say that it's, saying, hey, there's something I'd like to say here. We're lucky we can do it sort of, in chat afterwards, or we can sort of stew on it a bit afterwards. But it is, especially in a newer group, like if I go to a Command Fest and I play with 3 strangers, and I want to play with them again, or at least I want to leave a good impression, or I want to, clear the air. Doing that bit of a gut check and actually saying, hey, can we have a tough conversation here? Because, I didn't enjoy that. It feels imposing. It can be difficult to vocalize. This is somewhere that maybe we as the RC could provide, if we had these tools for building playgroups, maybe there would be a way of giving feedback after the game back to people that was well measured. We could give people terminology. You and I are lucky. We work with words a lot. We talk a lot.
Right.
That makes it easier to express difficult sentiments like, hey, Sheldon, so the way that you sort of took me out at the end of that game instead of taking out Toby and then you lost to him, that's frustrating to me. This is a high level concept that, the words don't necessarily come easy. So try. Right.
Well, and I think you and I have to be, and Scott and Toby have to be sensitive to the level of privilege that we enjoy when we go to one of those events, because you or I saying something to somebody is different than just person saying something to them.
I mean, I'll be honest. If I'm at a Command Fest as an RC member, I don't need to tell people whether I enjoyed the experience or not. I should be listening to them.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, occasionally I'll do it. I'll go, yay! I'm not playing Magic, but other than that, it's my I'm there to. I'm sort of there for those people. So,
I mean the crazy experiment that I did at in Seattle, where I played the 8 simultaneous games of Commander 1-on-1. And there were a couple of those. Like, there was one person who was playing a powered Nagila deck, and when I'd asked them what power level, he was like, it's pretty good. And I was like, you should be careful when you tell people that. They might misunderstand.
Right. Well, we have unfortunately been sitting in this chair just a little too long, and it's time to wrap the episode. If you're watching us on YouTube, please remember to follow, like, subscribe, and ring those bells. We'd hate for you to miss one of these thrilling conversations or some of the cool stuff that we bring up during the episode. Before we go, why don't you please tell these folks where they can find you on social media?
So, best place to find me is Genomancer at Twitter. There's that. Also, you can send me contact messages through the mtgcommander.net website, and we'll get those. Also, as Sheldon has said, we play on Twitch. I try to be there every Thursday, sometimes on the Sunday streams. And that's a great place to just drop in, join the community, and you can chat with us. I try to answer. I make sure I have the chat up so we can see, questions as they come up and start conversations.
I'm on Twitter and Facebook by my name, Sheldon Menery. You can also find me regularly in many of the channels of the RC's Discord server, and you can check out the show notes below for a permalink. Please come join us. Please tune in to my other show, Commander Community, with co-host Anthony Alongi every Monday here on Star City Games and on Twitter. Star City Games and on YouTube. On Thursdays, like we mentioned, at 8 p.m. Eastern in the U.S., you can catch the four of us on the RC Twitch channel. That's twitch.tv/CommanderRC. Now also on Sundays, 2 o'clock Eastern in the afternoon. You never know which special guests are going to show up for Game 2. Finally, on Sundays, you can find me right here on StarCityGames.com, writing about the best format in Magic history. We'll see you next time on the Command Chair. As always, I'm Sheldon Menery.